Good morning, welcome back. I'm George and this is the Baker Farm. Today we're going to take a tour of our garden and show you how it's been doing the last month or so. Today is June 10th, 2023, so let's get started. So the first ones we have here are russet Burbank potatoes. Now they're nice and bright and green. That means they're probably not ready to harvest yet. Next off we have these Yukon Gold potatoes. Now you'll notice several of them are starting to wilt, and I'm sorry if you can hear that noise in the background. Somebody's revving an engine a couple of lots over. And with these are mostly ready to go. And you'll see I've got a couple that I've dug up here, and they look in pretty good shape. So I'm pretty happy with that. Next off, we have our red Pontiac potatoes, and these are almost all ready to go. Now I did a little experiment here. I've got some in the pine straw and some under dirt that I mounded. If you want to understand why you mound potatoes, I'll link a video, and I've also got a short that kind of explains why you want to do that. Now you'll notice I dug up a couple of these, and we've got some serious case of potato scab on these, and that's caused by bacteria. It can also be caused from dry water, a couple of other things. Dry water. Dry soil, too dry a soil, and a couple of other things. Now a lot of the soil was very wet when I planted the original potatoes, so that could have contributed to it. I'm hoping that's more of an exception to the rule, as we saw the Yukon Gold looked quite nice. So let's go on over here. Next off, I have my cauliflower and my broccoli. Now this was more an experiment than anything, because I started these very early and I got them into the ground fairly early. But I've come to realize that it just gets too warm here too quickly in the spring. We're in the east coast of South Carolina, and you'll notice these are the cauliflower. I don't have any heads at all in here, and they should have already been headed up. So I'm pretty much going to have to nix doing the cauliflower in the spring. I'm going to do another batch in the fall, and hopefully they'll turn out fine. However, check out the broccoli. We've got a nice head here. Now this one is splitting, so that means that there's heat problems. It's probably starting to go to seed. I need to go ahead and get this harvested so we can eat it. Now the nice thing about this, and here's another one over here, it's splitting a little bit as well, as is this one. And oh, we got a lot of heads. We got one here too, and we've got a bigger one here and one down here. So I'm going to get those harvested, and we'll get them inside and have them for dinner one evening. Now we also have these leaves. These will not go to waste. Most of these will wind up in my chicken coop, giving to my chickens, and then we'll put a lot of them in our compost heap, so we can basically recycle them for next year. And that's a nice thing. Ooh, we got a bug there. Let's get rid of you. That's the nice thing about having your own compost heap, is you can recycle failed plants, because we all have them from time to time. You have things that go awry. So let's go on over here to our garlic, and these are definitely ready to go. I should have probably pulled them a couple of weeks ago, but I just did not have time. So we are going to pull those later today. Look for a future video on that. And I'm really happy with how these have done. Matter of fact, I'm gonna go ahead and pull one up and show you what it looks like. Now what you want to do with these is you want to kind of get down deep and just kind of lift them up a little bit, so you're not pulling them out of the ground. My soil is very loose, so we'll pull that up, shake it off, and check that out. This is awesome. These are normally about 3 inches across, and I'll put the name in the bottom here. They are soft neck, and I'll need to dust these off. Now these were just watered. Now some people will argue you shouldn't water towards the end of a garlic's life before you harvest it, but you know, these are turning out great for me so far. I've been pretty happy with it, and I'm just gonna keep going with that. I grew them a couple years ago and had some great ones then as well. Let's get rid of this little weed here. Now over on this side is my wonderful weed patch. Just kidding. Over on this right side, I got an infestation of ants early on in the season. I didn't want to use anything chemical on them, because I wanted to be able to keep using this to grow things later on. And they just kind of left. and they're all gone. So I'm pretty happy with that. I'll be able to use this bed this fall probably for more broccoli and cauliflower. And excuse the weeds, I haven't got out here to weed in a couple of days. So this is my pepper plot. I have some Chinese 5-color, I have some California Wonder, and I have some jalapenos. Don't quite remember which row is which, but they are doing very well so far. So a little worried they didn't get off to a very good start, but this one's got a lot of little flowers on it. I don't know if you can see that. So this one is doing pretty good. And peppers take heat. They need a lot of heat to get going. So they're going to be later in the season anyway. So now I planted those from seed starts that I started inside the house in early February. Now let's take a look at some I planted from seed. So we've got this one here, which is doing quite well. We've got this one here, which is also doing quite well. I believe we got this one here and this one here. I've got to get in and weed the rest of this stuff. I've got a cat that gets around here, and I think they may have dug up the rest of the seeds, or the birds may have done that. I'm going to have to give it another shot next year. I might experiment with some row cover, some very thin row cover, but it just gets so hot here. It bakes the plants, even the real thin stuff. So I'm going to have to be careful with that. Alrighty, over here is the tomatoes. And boy, are they doing well. I've got my marigolds and my nasturtiums to kind of ward off the bugs and stuff that we don't want to get on the tomatoes. And then these are Romas, and I can't be happier with those. Those are going to start getting very ripe very soon, and we plan on canning those. I mean, just look at these. They are just so beautiful. Now, one thing about tomatoes, you'll see them split from time to time. And what that means is they're not getting enough water, or they're getting too much water. And you have to be careful with that, because if they go without water for a long period of time and then they suddenly get a lot, they're going to just suck up as much as they can, and that's what causes the splitting. So what I do is, and this just works for my area, you got to figure out what works for your area, is I water them deeply with a drip irrigation system about 30 minutes every morning. And that gets them nice and completely hydrated, and we don't have any trouble with splitting, as you can see. And this is what's called a mortgage lifter. It's got a little black on the bottom, might be some bottom end rot there, but I don't know, we'll have to wait and see. It might just be some normal darkening where the blossoms fall off. And we got some more Romas right there. Got a little bit of a mutant here. I'm not sure exactly what happened to this one, but we'll probably put it in a compost pile. And then we got another one here. This one. Now you see what happens. This one was leaning against the branch, so it kind of more than likely damaged itself from that. And that's why it's important to keep these things pruned. I've been away from the garden for about a week, so I need to get back in here and get these things pruned. Now these are cherry tomatoes. And I just love these cherry tomatoes. They're so sweet. Then over here we've got more marigolds and more nasturtiums, and we've got more of our we call mortgage lifters. Doing pretty good here. And look, there's a huge one right there. That might be a German pink. I get the two confused. And then we've got some more cherry tomatoes here. And it had something kind of weird happen to this last plant. It just kind of shriveled up on me after it got going. It's in the same soil with the rest of them. It hasn't been exposed to anything I don't know of. But then we've got this shoot here that is doing quite well. I'm kind of let it grow because this other part's not doing very well. So I'd be interested if anyone has any ideas about what's causing that. Please put a comment down below. And these are looking very, very good, though. The tomatoes are. And then we've got more Romas. I mean, look at this. They are just gorgeous. And got a bunch more coming in. Now, Roma's what's called a determinate. So they will generally, not exactly, but generally come in all at once, and then you're kind of done. The other ones on the other side, the cherries, the German pink, and the mortgage lifters, those are indeterminate. So those will continue to grow up. Whereas the Romas are more of a bush, and you can kind of tell from the height, they probably won't get much taller than that, a couple, 2-3 feet, but the other ones can go all the way up. And you definitely want to have some kind of trellis set up or some kind of support so they don't fall over. Now, you also want to prune from time to time. Now, the jury is out on how much pruning you want to do, especially in the South. I've heard tell that you can burn your tomatoes if you don't give them shade. Although a couple years ago, I pruned the mess out of them and they were just fine. My Romas are looking fine, and we've had some 90 degree days, and I am in straight sun here, full sun. So we'll see what happens this year. All right, we go from there. And this is our little zucchini garden. And I'm just amazed. These have just taken off. I've got a video on building this, and what this was a chicken coop, a hoop coop that I had for my chickens. We tore it down, and since the ground under it, they'd been using it for about 2 years, I figured it was probably pretty fertile, and I think I was right. So we'll look down here, and we can see some of the flowers. I believe those are the male flowers. And we got some little female flowers with the zucchinis on them. I may have this backwards, but there's a little zucchini. I don't know if you can quite see it there. Little zucchini forming there. There's one there. So this is going to be amazing. Now please take a look at the video, because you can kind of, in that video, you can see why these are so much smaller. And I'll do another video with an update on this. You can see why these are so much smaller than these big ones, even though they were planted at the same time. Now in here is my basil, and those need a little attention too. I need to thin those out a little bit, but those are just doing amazingly well too. And over here I had 2 rows of sunflowers that were rarely old seed, and then here I had some fairly new seed sunflowers. So I can't wait to see those. Those need to be thinned out too, and that's probably something I'm going to do today as well. Get those all thinned out. Well, alrighty, let's go ahead and head on over to the fruit trees, and we can talk about those. All right, let's start here on the front. Now this is a plum tree. Now I had a bunch of plums on it early in the season, and I haven't looked into this, but we had a cold snap like a lot of the US did in maybe late March, early April, somewhere in that area. It got really cold after several weeks of very warm weather, and I think it kind of turned these trees for a loop. Now if you look down here, you'll see on the hay, or the wheat straw, we've got a bunch of wheat stalks growing, and you got to be careful if you're going to use wheat straw for mulch, because of that. It will grow. I've cut it down several times so far. I'm gonna cut it down again, and hopefully it'll be good to go. The one over there by the apple tree is a lot worse, but I'll show you one that just didn't grow at all. But I think I'm probably going to move to pine straw after this. It's a little easier to handle, not quite as expensive as wood chips, and it makes a good mulch. So let's go over to this other plum tree. Oh, and we have a plum right there. One made it. Let's hope the deer doesn't get it. So I think I've got a deer running around and kind of pruning these trees a little for me. But this tree is also looking good. Now I do need to prune them. I'm going to do it this fall and kind of shape them up a good bit and get them to where they're all set for next year. All right, and after that we've got our peach tree, which is just taking off. Now, believe it or not, South Carolina is actually 3rd in the nation for peach production. Before that cold snap, this thing was full of little baby peaches. And after the cold snap, I thought they were going to make it, but they didn't. They slowly disappeared. I don't think it was the deer. I think they just dropped off. I did a little research, and this year Georgia is projected to lose 80% of their harvest, and South Carolina's, which is where I'm at, is projected to lose about 50% of their harvest of peaches. So I'm not in this alone. And if you'll notice, like I mentioned, the wheat straw down there is not growing anything. So that was a good bale. Now if we look, I think we've got a few going, but they're kind of getting ate up with bugs. And after losing them, I decided just to kind of let it go this year. There's another one there. And see how she goes and just kind of let her go. These are about I want to say 2 years old now. They've been in the ground 2 years. They were about 5-6 foot tall when we bought them. So we'll see how that goes. And I'll also be pruning that up this fall. Over here, we have an apple tree. And I can never keep these two apple trees straight. My wife has to do that for me. And I don't see any apple blossoms on it. I think the weather probably, and now apple trees in specific need a certain number of cold days every winter. And our winter this year was very mild. We had some really bad days for a couple, like right around Christmas. We had that really bad cold snap that went throughout the nation. And we were actually below freezing for a full day, which is really rare for us. And I'm thinking that probably affected the apple trees as well. Not so much that day, but the fact that we didn't have enough days of cold weather for them to set apples. And the peaches do too. And I'm sure that probably affected the peach tree as well. Now, I don't see any on this one at all. I've got some blossoms up there. Of course, once again, the deer could be eating the blossoms. I want to get a trail camera out here so I can kind of monitor it and see how it goes. All right, so that's the apple trees. Now we got one thing left. That is our horseradish. Now, once again, this is a little overgrown. I've got to get it kind of, these weeds out of it. But I'll be honest, I work a 9 to 5 and it's hard to get out here sometimes. They're all a little bug eating too. But I've had these growing now for 3 years. This is the 3rd year. And that's something about horseradish you got to remember is that they will just keep coming back. They are invasive, they will spread. So you want to put them in a contained area, kind of like this 2x2 raised bed I put them in. I want to move these over with the other ones so I can hook the irrigation back up, which I might do this year or maybe next year. But once you get them going, they just keep coming back. And I'm going to harvest some this fall and get my first taste of some homemade horseradish. So that's it. That's the garden update for June 2023. If you got any comments, please be sure to post them below. I hope you have a wonderful week, an awesome harvest, and hope to see you again soon. Thank you.